Time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. I know that the infrastructure bill has not officially passed, but there was a major breakthrough yesterday with 18 Republicans coming on board in a remarkable display of bipartisanship. And Al, let me start with you. I mean, all this is good news, unless I'm missing something.
Obviously, it's good news, and as we've said over the course of this year, these negotiations go on, and all the reporters who have never been in part of them assume they're breaking down when they're not, and eventually they come to an agreement if it makes sense for both parties. It's a low bar because what the agreement was an agreement to begin consideration of the bill. I don't think the bill has even been written, and as you look at some of the specifics of it, pretty thin on the pay-fors. Going to use a lot of the money that hasn't been spent on previous COVID previous COVID relief bills. A little bit of rosy scenario in there, fast growth rate, all that kind of thing. But nonetheless, it's a very significant thing. And what I think it shows is that maybe things are beginning to turn a little bit in politics. In DC, and I don't want to exaggerate the importance of this, because this bill is a long way from being passed. It has to get through the Senate. It probably will. Schumer says he'll get a vote on it before the August recess, and I think that will probably happen. But there are indications in the House that Pelosi's going to have a hard time keeping her caucus together, and there's only a 4 or 5 vote majority there. So, and that won't happen until the fall. So, basically, this is the first step. But with a couple of other things that have happened, I think the discussion that we had last week about sort of the reality of slim majorities, this is another indication that finally members of Congress are realizing that. So we'll see what happens, but I also don't think it's I don't know if we'll get into this discussion or not, but I don't think it is a coincidence that this agreement happened so quickly after the Republican, after the January 6th hearings, and I think the Senate Republicans wanted to make sure that Leader McCarthy and the nutcases on the Republican side in the House who went after the police officers who tried to defend them aren't a major message this week of the Republican Party as they look toward 2022.
Greg, you brought this to our attention with some optimism in your email. What is your take?
I agree with Al. There's still a ways to go, but this is a case, I believe, where we really see how leadership makes a difference. And I think the Biden administration, from the White House to the OMB to his legislative affairs staff, stayed on this. They were willing to work with both sides of the aisle to address issues. Schumer clearly, as the Senate leader, gets a good deal of credit for bringing parties together, and then Republican leaders stepped up to show, for whatever reason, but I think they believe in the bill, but I think they also wanted to show that they can work together. So I hope that the takeaway from this is not only the nation eventually gets the funding quite necessary for infrastructure, but that we see that leadership in the legislative branch as well as the executive branch can begin to accomplish some things, which I do believe is what the American people really want. And it's a nice contrast to the the hearings on the January 6th episode and to other very partisan rhetoric that still emanates from Capitol Hill. But at least this is an example of people coming together to get something done.
This also puts some pressure, I think, on the progressives in the Democratic Party. They've sort of got a free ride, speak out and, make all these claims and push for all this major legislation. This morning, the economic growth for the second quarter numbers came out, and GDP is up at over a 6% annual rate. That's pretty fast. The economy has really recovered. And, I think wiser heads understand that if they can get $1 trillion infrastructure bill, that's going to be pretty damn good in these circumstances, because the political climate is changing rapidly. And by next year, if we don't, fall back into real pandemic trouble, the issues are likely to be inflation and crime. And so a $3.5 or $4 trillion social spending bill that the progressives want, and that they're threatening now in the House to, if they don't get that, they're going to pose this, is really unrealistic, because all the do-good rhetoric in the world won't stop inflation from rising. So this is an important first step, but in an indication that the political debate in Washington is going to change.
Craig, let me get back to you as a follow-up to what you were saying about the January 6th investigation. The House Select Committee did start on Monday. I saw the statements by the police officers. I was moved. I can't imagine anybody would not be moved. And the takeaway for me was that this is a serious matter. And yet the Republican Party has been organized around the idea of marginalizing the procedure, withdrawing from the procedure, getting ahead of the procedure with their own kind of messaging. And I can't imagine this makes political sense. But
I agree with you. You couldn't help, if you have blood flowing through your veins, to watch that testimony and not feel, nothing but respect for the men and women in blue who were really on the front line protecting our leaders. And the thought that anyone would actually want to walk away, look away, kind of deny what happened is really unimaginable. I agree that there are Republicans who indeed want to do that, and there certainly are Republicans in leadership who would like this to go away. It's not going to go away. The only reason that I conclude for the Republican leader in the House to take the position he has, to try to derail the process first by putting members on the committee that would just be disruptive, and now he wants to have his own committee. The only reason is this feeling that the path forward has to include Donald Trump. They are beholden to Donald Trump. And when you look at some of the analysis that's coming out about how the fundraising by the Republican Party, by the Republican committees in the House and Senate have relied upon Trump's name, by the way, something he objects to now because he wants to do his own fundraising. But when you look at the extent to which they've relied upon it, it's incredible. And most of the time, one party is trying to raise money by critiquing the other party. President Biden's name appears, a few dozen times to hundreds of times in which Trump's name is evoked. And so I know we all know about fundraising. This is a highly competitive, carefully studied program. It's almost a science to figure out what's going to get you to open the message and what's going to make somebody give. And clearly, to those they're targeting in the Republican Party, the giving is coming from Trump supporters, and they just can't pull themselves away. At the same time, they're beginning to see and fear candidates who are so poorly positioned to win in a general election, being offered up as, kind of Trump Republicans in primaries, that they're confounded by, they want the money, they want the funds, but to continue to draw upon some of the Trump candidates is not a path to success. And I do think that in the months to follow, the ability for Trump to raise money is going to diminish, and the strength of his candidates will diminish. Whether that coincides with, November 2022 or not, I don't know. But I have to think that he's probably as strong now as he'll be, and that it'll be weakened in the months ahead.
Al, you have the last word. Is this savvy political thinking or a disaster?
First of all, what I'd say is all the money in the world can't sell an unpalatable message. And this is an unpalatable message. I mean, the way the Republicans reacted, or a lot of them, and the way Fox and the right-wing networks reacted was really disgraceful. But it's also short-sighted. It's self-defeating. I mean, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger alone will probably make sure the truth comes out, and the truth is pretty clear. I mean, it's not like the committee doesn't have all of the tape of those same Republicans who are now claiming this didn't happen from right after January 6th and on January 6th, where they were scared for their lives. And Leader McCarthy went to the floor and attacked the president. And, that's all going to come out. And it's all part of the record. You can't get away from it. And what Craig said, I think, is right. I mean, I think Trump's influence is going to wane. He lost a primary on Tuesday. That may be in Texas. That may be the most important news that didn't get very much coverage of the day. Now, it was a low turnout runoff, but don't forget, AOC won in a very low turnout runoff. I think less voters voted for AOC than voted in this Texas primary. So that could be the reason that the Republicans are so damn scared of Trump is because they think he can beat them in a primary, and they're all in safe districts, so that doesn't matter. But the reason this is so self-defeating over the long haul is the voters that are going to decide the Congress and the presidency are, as they did in 2020, are going to be college-educated white voters. And I cannot believe that college-educated voters who see that testimony aren't going to be moved. If you're a Trumpy, and you're angry at the world, maybe you say, well, these guys are just traitors. But I think the college-educated electorate is by and large going to be moved, and I think you saw that. I think McConnell went to the floor and praised the Capitol Police yesterday, you see McConnell today or yesterday announced that he's going to put a huge amount of his own campaign money into a vaccine campaign. Pro-vaccine campaign. You're seeing movement away from some of the nutty positions. So I think that wiser Republican heads, who I may not agree with on much, but have decided that going this course, it's one thing to get to the edge of the cliff with Trump. It's another thing to jump. And and with all his legal problems coming up, I mean, it may not be a very good position to be wrapped in Donald Trump's ropes as we get into 2022. So what the Republicans are doing in response to January 6th, I think is despicable, disgraceful, but more important, it's self-defeating.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.